Hi. Hey, welcome to the Gooder podcast. Thanks again for joining us. I'm your host, Diana Freich. As partner and CMO of Retail Voodoo, an award-winning branding agency, I have met and worked with some of the most amazing women in the naturals industry: food, beverage, wellness, and fitness. As such, I decided to create the Gooder podcast to interview these great people and subject matter experts and have them share their insights, expertise, and passions to help businesses around the world become gooder. So today we get to talk about reducing single-use plastics and seizing opportunities. And I'm super excited to tackle these topics, especially if I could get a word out correctly, because I'm tripping all over myself, with my guest, Kate Flynn, who is CEO and founder of Sun Swell Foods, whose mission is to make healthy and sustainable eating accessible with their collection of sustainably packaged, organic, plant-based pantry staples and snacks. Sun Swell is a very exciting, the first food company in the U.S. to offer a wide array of healthy foods in compostable, plastic-free packaging. Welcome, Miss Kate. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm glad to be here.
Yes. Are you in Santa Barbara today?
I am, yes.
Okay, and weather's good, or I've heard that it's California's doing a little bit of topsy-turvy in the last couple of
Yeah,
weeks.
it's unusually, I don't want to say cold because it's not cold but for us here in Santa Barbara, it's a little chilly than than we're used to for this time of year, but I can't complain. I grew up in Ohio, so
Oh, wow.
I know what those brutal winters can be like. So we it's still not too bad.
Yeah. And springs, because I am pretty sure Ohio got a fair bit of snow this week. Am I right?
Yeah, I know that Massachusetts had snow. I saw someone's picture from like a couple days ago. I was like,
Yeah.
ooh.
Yeah, and like,
I'll take our 65-degree weather. It's
oh my
okay.
gosh. I was talking with somebody from Denver 2 days ago, and they had, I think, 7 inches of snow. And then they said, and in 3 days, it's supposed to be 75. And I'm like, welcome to spring, right? That's just crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I didn't even know this when we booked this, and maybe it was kismet, but when we scheduled the recording for today is Earth Day. I mean, people aren't going to hear this on Earth Day, but we're recording this on Earth Day. So how appropriate that the stars aligned for that recording to happen today. And then I also want to throw in that you're a B Corp, so we're kind of sisters. I'm going to call it this, where we're
Yeah.
sisters, right? So what a great day for us to be able to connect, and I'm sure you're quite busy. So thank you so much for your time.
Of course, and actually, fun fact, Earth Day was started here in Santa Barbara. So
Oh,
I
really?
feel it was, yeah. I learned this a couple of years ago, but yeah, no, I saw it when I realized that we had accidentally booked this on Earth Day. I was like, wow, it couldn't be a more fitting day for us to
Could not.
chat about getting rid of single-use plastic.
I know. And a little bit about how you got there, because I think there's a lot of people who are on fire about it, but I think how you came through it and how you got to this idea is really, and then the subsequent leadership that you're bringing at a national level is really going to be exciting to talk about. But before we go down all of those rabbit holes, why don't you tell us a little bit, and Sun Swell Foods as it exists today? What, why does it exist, and what it's all about?
Yeah, so where we are today, our goal is to really help eliminate single-use plastic from the grocery industry and to help people live healthier lives. So we're an online plastic-free health food store, and really we just want to make it easy for people to make healthy and sustainable choices. It's we don't want people to have to go out of their way to make those trade-offs. We want to make
Uh-huh.
it simple. So we view that as our role, and also just we're proud to be a pioneer in this space and kind of pushing the boundaries when it comes to using sustainable packaging and whatnot. And it's I think as a young emerging, we have the permission and ability to do that in a way that more mature companies just aren't able to do for totally understandable reasons.
Yeah. Well, and then the pioneering component can normalize it, and then it just becomes something that they can do. It's
Yeah.
always fun when I can see, and I've interviewed people from really large multinational organizations to wee ones where there's literally a single founder owner, And what I find to be most interesting is the little guys always think the big guys have got it together, but the big guys are kind of going, we're so big that there are things that the little guys can do better than us, and they're learning from you all. So I love that it's symbiotic. And I think if we can just kind of talk about the fact that there is a symbiotic learning relationships between, your strengths are always your weaknesses. And so if we all work together, at some point we can be taking care of things across the board rather than pitting ourselves against each other. So I love
Totally
what
agree.
you're doing.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's start with this journey, right? So before you created Sun and Swell, you were in management consulting, and I believe there was some CPG, food and beverage in there, but I'll let you talk about that a little bit more. And what was that transition, or what were those things that took you from taking the experience that you had and trying something new? What did you take and what did you want to learn? What did you want to do differently?
Yeah. So prior to launching Sun and Swell, I was working for a firm. The firm's name is Kurt Salmon. It's since been acquired by Accenture, but our
Uh-huh.
firm's focus was on retail and consumer products. And the
Hmm.
specific group I was in was looking at was helping both private equity firms when they were looking to acquire CPG companies, so kind of on
Okay.
the diligence side of things, but also working on strategy with big retailers and consumer
Hmm.
products companies with their like executive teams and whatnot. So I knew I was deeply passionate about the world of consumer, CPG. Like I knew that world was where I was really excited about. Um, I did consulting for about 4 years. I loved it. I learned a lot, but kind of had that like classic moment where I was like, this isn't what I want to do for the rest of my
Mm.
life. I want
Yeah.
something where I'm, feeling a little bit more fulfilled, whatever that means.
Hmm.
I didn't know what it meant. I left my job at the same time, moved to Santa Barbara with my husband, and we just wanted to see kind of where the world took us.
Hmm.
I also knew I had a passion for health and wellness, and I kind of experimented with a few different things. I was looking into becoming a health coach. I was teaching
Yeah.
fitness classes,
Yeah.
and I started Sun and Swell. And Sun and Swell started to take off, and I kind of found it to be the perfect mix of being able to use all my skills that I learned from consulting and all my prior, everything that I've learned in my career thus far, but also using a single product and our business to really try to help change the world in a meaningful way. When we started, we were really focused on solving the problems around health. So
Yeah.
the whole idea of us playing in the world of plastic free, honestly, that wasn't on my mind when we started the company. When we started the company, I had just gone through a personal journey with my health where I
Oh.
found the value of eating whole, real foods and how impactful that was to my life. I found
Mm-hmm.
it hard to find whole, real food snacks in stores. So that was kind of when we launched, we were trying to make whole, real food snacks more accessible to people.
Hmm.
But quickly into my journey, I realized, okay, I'm solving this problem of health, but
Yeah.
we're creating another problem, which is single-use plastics.
Yeah.
And it was this weird kind of it just wasn't sitting well with me. Like
Hmm.
I was so proud about one thing we were doing, but then also I was like almost like ashamed of this other part of our business.
Yeah.
But
I get it.
yeah, and so that's kind of although we started trying to solve the health problem, we started to transition pretty early on into trying to think about both health and of people, but also health of our planet. And
Yes.
kind of found our niche and our that in this world of solving the single-use plastic problem along the way.
Hmm. It's such a challenge. We work with so many brands, and single use is, of course, that's where the money is, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you can make the value packs. Yes, they come into play, especially when pandemic came around. Those value size, family size, mega size, single packs became really easy to sell because we were centralized in our world. But now, with coming out of pandemic, I think single use is going to take off again or continue to take off. I don't know
Yeah.
how to talk about that because people are going to have to relearn how to not have their world be 360 in their home. And what
Totally.
do? We go for convenience. We can have all the glass containers and the reusable containers in our house, but if we're not set up and prepped for that, we're just going to grab something that's a multi pack and go. And now we've got
Totally.
expanded waste. So I can understand that, and meeting the needs of the consumer and meeting the needs of the environment sometimes is tricky. So
It
I can
is.
appreciate
Yeah,
that.
it definitely is.
Yeah. So now Sun and Swell started out as a traditional CPG brand, right? I mean, basically selling products
Yeah.
through wholesale channels, and now you're wanting to make a bigger impact, turning it from simply, I mean, you're already like you're making some big movements and impacts on the planet, but turning it CPG, that's a DTC e-com type of thing where you're relying other people to a much bigger, more retail concept. Is that right? Do I have that right?
Yeah, yeah. So basically, when we started a couple years ago, as I just mentioned, we were trying to solve, like we were trying to make grab and go snacking, real food snacking more
Yeah.
accessible. So our,
Yeah.
our product line was a line of grab and go snacks,
Mm-hmm.
and we were selling them through. We were actually focused more on the alternative channels like corporate
Right.
offices and coffee shops and stuff like that,
Sure.
but also some grocery and stuff. But the
Mm-hmm.
ultimate vision for that brand was to be like, like we aspired to be somebody like Cliff Bar, like a household bar, a
Yep.
household snack food brand is kind of what the vision was for the brand.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the reason we kind of pivoted away from that is because when we started to make that transition to plastic-free packaging, compostable packaging,
Mm-hmm.
um, our first when we first started to make that transition, the goal was, hey, let's just convert these snacks over to compostable packaging. Like, let's just do
Right.
that. We did
Okay.
it really quickly, and we just made the switch. We started pushing it through all of our wholesale partners, and we quickly realized that compostable technology where it is today, or at least where it's evolving more, so it could look very different in the future. But
Right.
when we were trying to roll it out, we're like it's not ready to go sit on. It's not ready to go through distribution channels and go sit
Right.
on a shelf. And that there's several different reasons why. But we kind of realized we either need to pick a lane, like we either need to
Right.
stay
Right.
a traditional CPG brand, keep
Mm-hmm.
selling through all these traditional wholesale channels, and go back to plastic
Mm-hmm.
because compostable packaging is not ready for it, or commit to this plastic free side of
Yeah.
things. And we need to evolve our business model to accommodate that. And that's where we decided, okay, really, it's really set up for direct to consumer, not really
Yeah.
wholesale. So we kind of made that transition to direct to consumer. But then we also
Mm-hmm.
thought, like, our customers are constantly asking us, like, how can I buy? It's great that your snacks are in compostable, but like, can I buy more things in compostable packaging? Like, they want
Right.
more. They're not just looking for one snack; they're looking for
Right.
everything. And so we spent the past year building out our product assortment to not just include our single line of snacks, but to now
Mm-hmm.
include all shelf stable, but things that you
Yeah.
could use to stock your pantry. So nuts and
Yeah.
seeds and superfoods and flours, always all super healthy.
Yep.
But really now our vision has evolved, instead of becoming like this, looking towards someone like Cliff Bar that we're trying to aspire to, our vision has evolved to be more of like, can we be like the next Trader Joe's, but an online
Uh-huh.
model, a plastic-free model.
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of where we shifted over the past year.
Mm-hmm.
And it allows
Now
us to serve our customers in a better way.
I love that. And then the other thing that you mentioned when we were preparing for this was this concept of you wanted to have a whole foods kind of standard of product ingredients or and products in general, but you wanted pricing to be more in line with Thrive, and that conversation came around about through this conversation of accessibility, affordability for a more mainstream consumer. And I love that. And where are you in that process?
Yeah, so this especially has become really important to us as we are thinking about, like, we are trying to make a big dent in the market and eliminating single-use plastic. And
Mm-hmm,
that's great if we can help the Whole Foods shopper make that switch, or the customer who would typically that spend their money at Whole Foods or something like that. But what about the people who aren't shopping at Whole Foods? What about the person who's shopping at primarily Trader Joe's? Like, what if they want to make a switch? But if our price points are too high for them, we're basically like we're not making it easier for them, because they either have to make a trade-off. They have to they might be buying higher quality food, but maybe that they don't have. That's not how they were intending to spend their money, So we have thought a lot about like we don't want to be exclusive with this. I think that happens a lot in the world of sustainability. Like it's like all this is, like electric cars, like all these things are like you can afford if you have more income. And so it's like, how do we definitely want to remain a health food company, because that's like, I also don't want to hurt people's health. Like, so I want to we want to make sure we're selling health foods. But the main thought that we've been having recently is, do we expand from offering 100% organic foods, which is what we currently do? Do we expand that offering to include at least some conventional items, and maybe not for everything, but for like our grains and our nuts and those staple products that we know people are buying, and people aren't always looking for organic with those products. The same way that when you shop at Whole Foods or any health food store, they have both organic and non-organic offerings. Like, is that a way for us to make it more accessible? But then the other thing we do is we try to cut out like as many middlemen as possible along the way. So in the best way that we source products, which we do for about half of our products, is we're actually buying direct from farm. So we're buying from farm, we're shipping it to the Sun Swell warehouse, we're packaging it, and we're sending it out to customers. Like, that's the shortest supply chain we can create. And that's what we do with a lot of the products we sell. And that's where we can really get the cost savings, because we're not paying for all the people along the way. We can't do that with everything. Like especially like cashews aren't grown in the United States. And we don't know, we aren't importing yet. Maybe we will someday. So we do have to work with an ingredient supplier for that. But that's, I think, shortening the supply chain, and also thinking about expanding our product to be just to make everything more inclusive for people who are looking to shop sustainably.
Wonderful. You are, let's see, I'm like really good about getting four thoughts wanting to come out at the same time. With Kelly Velakis, she's the CEO of Ecos, and that's how they're managing their costs too. They have a very similar POV on like, well, if we have to cut the costs out, where do we cut the costs? They own their entire supply chain, aside from the form factors, but then they're also doing things like opting into programs like Loop, where people can reuse materials. But this, I'm hearing a theme here. We make our better for you products accessible to everybody, and not just the upper middle class people that can afford to be healthy. I think that's the thing that I'm trying to shake up here is that just because the people that have the wherewithal to be healthy are not the only ones that want to be healthy. Quite frankly, people who are economically disadvantaged have more of an incentive to stay healthy because they don't have the resources to get sick. Right. Or to care for an illness. And so I love this concept of looking at every component of your business and taking out what isn't necessary when possible. Great.
I think that I definitely have been hearing more and more this idea of like a more vertically integrated supply chain, because I think for a while, at least like what I was hearing when I was starting the company was investors don't like you to own your own manufacturing. They want you to work with co-packers. They want you to work with 3PLs. Like, they don't want, like, it was always like, investors don't want you to do this. And it's hard to not listen to that noise. Our journey along the way has been, nobody's going to do it as well as us. And not that I do think that there's room for outsourcing things, of course, but for us, one of the things that has really allowed us to do what we do today is because we own our manufacturing, our packaging, and our distribution. Like, that's what's enabled us to build what we have. And there are times earlier on in the company where we thought about outsourcing more things. I'm so grateful it didn't work out, because it kind of forced us to build. And as a result, like, we're in a much better place, and we can serve our customers better, and we can manage the supply chain better, and we can make sure everyone along the supply chain is getting treated the way we want them to be treated, and all of that.
More control. And it's tricky because it's not really a one size all type of solution, right? There are some organizations where owning your own, where co-manning and co-packing absolutely makes difference.
Totally.
And I think you want to work with a VC or an investment person who can look at your exact situation and what you want to do with your business and make the right choice for you, and not just kind of go, no, this way always works or this way never works, and that type of thing. So I like the dialogue for sure.
I think it's a matter of like, what is your goal that you're trying to do with your brand, and like, where does that fall? And that's the same thing I tell people all the time with, I get a lot of people ask me about like transitioning to compostable packaging. And like, if that's going to be like the thing you're leading with, like, yes, but if you're just trying to check a box on sustainability, like go check another box, because like being the first person to use a material like is not
never
easy,
cheap.
And there's a million other sustainable things you can do that are like amazing. But it's the same. It's like, what is your ultimate like strategy and goal with the business, and like build your business around that, I think is definitely what's that versus hearing like somebody else did that, I need to do that too.
Yes, smart, so smart. I love this visibility, and as we're talking about this health and wellness bubble that we're trying to bust here, I think marketing has done such a good job of, maybe an overly good job of making health and wellness kind of this premium thing. And but it's such a strange dichotomy, because Walmart and Costco and Kroger are huge natural and organic retail methods. And you said something to me that I resonated with, and I just love this. You said it doesn't need to be organic to be healthy, kind of what you said to me earlier. I think we get caught up, those of us that financially have the resources, we get caught up on, well, I need it to be fair trade and organic and this, and I need all 47 of my certifications, which now makes my product 3 times more expensive. If you're not in that financial space to be able to do that, that doesn't mean that you can't eat healthy. Totally. And how are you, when you're, kind of along the line of when you're talking with other people about if you're just checking a box, are you having those conversations with folks that you're talking to?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like the way that we think about it is like, in the ideal world, everybody would buy all of their stuff from a farmer's market and local farms. It would all be organic and fresh. And like, that's like the goal, right? But like, that's not the reality that we live in. And so we're trying to connect the dots from like that to the packaged food industry with where it is today. And there is so much improvement to be done. Pick every single battle. Like for us, I got a little bit caught up on the regenerative agriculture movement, which I think is amazing.
Yes.
But I'm like, our battle is plastic-free packaging. Like that is the battle we're fighting.
Choose your one battle.
Everything. Exactly. And if we were to fight the regenerative agriculture and single-use plastic packaging, if those were the two if we were trying to do both, our product assortment would be like such a small amount of items, because there's only a very small assortment of products that are certified regenerative organic right now. I think there'll be more in the future, and we're excited to like be part of that movement. But we also can't say, hey, for us to sell something, it has to be regenerative organic certified, because we wouldn't have anything to sell, or we wouldn't have as broad of assortment to sell. So it's so I think that's like my biggest advice when I talk to people is like, pick your one thing that you want to be known for. And maybe it's regenerative ag, maybe it's plastic repackaging, maybe it's upcycling. Like there's all these different like really cool movements in the do-good industry, or in the food industry going on right now. So like pick that niche that you want to be known for, and just be really good at that, and be the leader in that. And then everything else, be on top of the trends, be ready to move on them when they become more accessible. But you don't have to be the person leading in everything.
And it's tricky, because from a brand position, at least, if you have too many evils that you're fighting, you can get stretched, and your messaging becomes complicated, and operationally it becomes a challenge to commit to it. So I think your advice here is just kind of stick to the one evil or the one good thing, however you want to position it, and just double down behind that. Doesn't mean that you're not paying attention to it, just like you said, or that you're not interested, or you're not making efforts toward those things, but just stand for the one thing, so that so that a consumer can, and a retailer and a distributor and a supplier, like they can check in or check out really easy. Make it easy for the
Totally.
end recipient of your message, what you stand for. Love that.
Yeah, and you're just like another thing you said that really resonates with me is the messaging,
Yeah,
because that's the other thing. Like we've personally struggled. We're like, okay, are we leading with health or are we leading
right,
with plastic free? Like what
right.
is the one thing that we're leading with? And we can be a health food like for us, like selling healthy food is kind of just like that baseline of quality.
Yep,
Like Patagonia, all their stuff is quality. Like that's just what they're
absolutely.
known for. But then
Yeah,
they are also known as like this purpose-driven brand that does all these,
yes,
other things in terms of helping the
yes.
planet. And um, but we've personally had to go through that struggle over the past year or so. Is like, what are we leading with?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we message that? And honestly,
Yep,
it's taken a lot of refining based on talking to
for
our
sure.
customers, understanding why they're buying us and stuff like that. But it is even just figuring out how to talk about it can
Yes.
get complicated.
It can be. And what I find is and you've gone through this, so you know exactly, but the more complicated it becomes, the more I always find it's always the scientific. Well, you want to be like really earnest about what you're
Yeah.
saying, and then it gets really scientific-y, and the end consumer is just like, well, is it good for the planet or bad for, like, that's all they want. They just give me
Yeah.
those two choices,
Yep.
and everything in between is
Right.
like irrelevant, except for the 0.5% that want to geek out on it over your
Yeah.
on your
Yeah.
website.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
absolutely. Now, we talked about compostability here and kind of the direction why you went there. We all know that there's an expense associated with this, and so this next question that I was going to discuss with you kind of already covered. So maybe you can talk a little bit about what has happened in the market with your relationships, and how you are starting to be looked to as an advisor and a leader in this kind of waste reduction, packaging alternatives, compostable packaging. Tell us a little bit about how that is starting to show up for you, and what kind of impact, and what we're seeing at a national level from your involvement.
Yeah. So I think that one of the reasons I'm a good resource when it comes to this is because so although now our model is like selling plastic free food online,
Yeah.
um, we actually tried to do it the traditional way and failed. Like
Okay.
we started, and that's the thing. Most brands today looking at compostable packaging already have an established supply chain and a
Yeah.
huge presence
Yeah.
in brick and mortar and grocery and stuff like that. And for us, we were small enough that we could literally like pivot our business model and just do something else. But that's not the reality for most companies out there today. And so I think that one of the things that, and that's actually one of the things we were talking about is like the cost per unit being a challenge. That's
Mm-hmm.
like personally, I think that's the smallest challenge. That is a challenge. Like it does get a little more expensive. But the bigger challenge is that the packaging itself has a shelf life. So unlike
Mm-hmm.
plastic packaging that is meant to last for hundreds of years, compostable packaging has a shelf life and it's meant not to last. And over time, the packaging starts to degrade. It doesn't mean it's going to disappear on the shelf,
Right.
but it means it's going to get wrinkly and the edges are going to curl and it's just not going to look as beautiful as a plastic package.
Uh-huh.
Even
Uh-huh.
even when even when you first use it, it's never going to be that like matte finish, like bright colors. It just doesn't work the same as plastic. And
Yeah.
so um, that's one of the things we learned was like that was the challenge that we had is like putting it that the technology at the time we tried to push it through wholesale just really wasn't ready.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like one of the best ways I can be a resource to people. And changing every day. So like in 6 months, or maybe there's even some materials out there today that would do really well on the shelf. But like
Yeah.
that's but my biggest like I think part of the way I help people
Yeah.
understanding like whether they should make this change is helping them understand like it's not just the cost. That's like
Mm-hmm.
that's one little thing. You really
Yeah.
have to be prepared for it to like disrupt the whole supply chain. For example, like it slows down co-packers' machines. So we don't have a co-packer, we pack in house, but if we were using a
Gotcha.
co-packer, that would be a challenge. That would be another cost increase, and it could cause some challenges with the co-packer. So I think that's like, I think we've just had the experience of trying to launch it in traditional food channels and having it fail. And I definitely think there's room for that to be done. And we hope that like in the future, like we can have a role there too. But I just like, I think the biggest thing is technology is improving every day. It's going to get better, but I don't think technology ever will get as good as plastic packaging, nor do I think it should. Like that's like, why should compostable be as amazing barrier qualities as plastic that's like meant to last forever? Like, I don't know if we're striving for the right standard, if that's what we're striving for. I think really we need to be reinventing our distribution systems around the packaging if we want to use it.
So I've got like 17 questions now. Do you ever see that episode of Adam Bruin's Everything where he talks about the Best Buy date and how the whole Best Buy date became established by the FDA?
I haven't seen that, but I just
I'm gonna make sure I'll send you a link.
Yeah, please send it to me. I would love to watch it. Yeah.
Have you? Do you know him, Adam Hanover?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm familiar with him. Yeah.
Great. So the thing that's kind of colliding in my head here, and bear with me, I see if I can articulate this concisely. If we're manufacturing food that have a 4-year shelf life simply because we can, then compostable packaging isn't going to be a thing, right? But in the last, I don't know how many years, really our manufacturing processes have been skewing more closer to a JIT, just in time type of program, where you don't have more than a few months of product at a time with a turnover. If we start shifting our heads from, okay, well, if we kind of take away this kind of Best Buy date, like relying on our senses, like, this doesn't smell good, I probably shouldn't eat it, or there's things growing on it, I should probably not eat it. And this is really around those products that are packaged with some sort of packaging film, because cans and glass, different situation. If it's just a matter of our system kind of reevaluating what is actually happening with our food chain and how quickly our products cycling through, and how much inventory do we really have a 12-year supply of Fritos sitting out there somewhere that needs to be in a film-based, if we start having those kinds of dialogues with ourselves, do you feel like we could make that shift to compostable, or am I cray-cray?
No, you're totally, I think that's spot on. And like, I think that we need to get our head, like as an industry, we need to stop trying to it's like, why are we trying to, I think we're looking at the problem wrong. I think the problem is like our food systems are like, they're set up to be like, nothing should have a 4-year shelf life. Like, why should we have something? I mean, unless it naturally has a 4-year shelf life.
Or disaster preparedness, right?
Yeah,
fine.
Exactly.
Okay, great.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And like, but like the same thing, if I take a thing of nuts from my cupboard, it's been there for 4 years and they're still good, great. Like, but they naturally last a long time, right. And that's fine. But like, it was really funny. We're talking to, like I said, we like to source things direct from farm as much as possible. And we're talking to a new farm right now that just sent us some samples. The samples showed up last night. They were like the most amazing dried fruits I've ever had. Like they had these like dried persimmons. It's like unreal, like nothing I've ever had before in my life. Juicy and sweet and so good. And they sent them all to us in paper bags with a little sticker on them. And I'm like, why can't we just sell things in paper bags with a sticker? I mean, like, it's like, it was just funny because I know why we don't. And like, I think that like we're selling, there's always, but like, it's funny because I was like, this is what would happen if we were buying things closer to the food source. There's basically like no packaging. And I think that like, it's just a matter of like, how do we rethink our and especially now with like technology and ability to deliver things, like there's just ways to kind of, our supply chain is pretty archaic. We've been doing the same food supply chain for years and years and years and years. And it's like, I think it's time to switch that up. And I think that will enable us to do things more sustainably on all other fronts.
I love it. I see some bit, like my head is like, okay, what's our next project? Kate, you and I are going to go have a drink somewhere. We're going to go save the world on something else.
Yes.
So I love talking about this. Now I want to switch the topic here a little bit and zag towards the relationship that your business partner is your husband. And I'd like to bring this up. I work with my husband, and I think there's a lot of people that that maybe don't know, like maybe might be like thinking of starting a new business with a family member or a spouse or a friend. And I would love for you to talk about how in the early days, or maybe even now, because it is still kind of early for you guys, how was that experience of being able to build the business and get excited and not get brought down by some of the painful moments? How do you guys manage life, or is it still kind of a little bit like one day to the next on who's on first when it comes to business and personal and family?
Yeah, so I think that a couple things. Like one of the reasons that things work really well for us working together is because we both share a similar work ethic, and
That helps.
regardless of whether you're working, and work can mean working on the business,
Right.
or work can mean like staying up late to like make our daughter's lunch for the next day. Like does it whatever it is. Like work can mean business related. It can mean things around the house. It can mean things in life. Like, but we share that like same drive and work ethic in terms of like just getting stuff done and continue to move forward and like stuff like that. And we share same goals with the business. So we're very aligned with what we want to do with the business, where we want to see it go. And in some ways, I feel like that probably, I always think about it all the time, well, what if I had like a co-founder that wasn't Bryan, that we didn't see the same thing with the business? Like that would be so hard. So for me, I think it makes it easier because we're aligned on those things. And we also are slightly, another thing that works well for us is we're kind of different people in terms of personalities. So I'm like super type A, I'm really particular. He's he's more laid back, and like he also like Bryan also like we separate our roles. So like I'm in charge of like product development and creative and marketing, and he's more on operations and sales, and that works really well together, that we like each know what our roles are, and at the end of the day, like certain things the buck stops with him and other times it stops with me.
Right.
And the other I think the last thing is just like we had our daughter last summer. So
oh my gosh,
she's about 10 months old right now.
Oh, you're a new mom.
And and, I think that like I honestly feel like that was also easier to navigate because we can kind of flow. Like there's a day like that our daughter needs that I need to spend more time with her, and I will, and he picks up the work stuff or vice versa. And so for us, it works really, really well. I couldn't imagine it any other way. But I always like, I feel like it's either like you work really well with your partner or you don't work so well with your partner, and neither way is the wrong way. It's just kind of like one or the other.
Right. Yeah, I know a lot. Excuse me. I have people out in the industry with them when they learn that my business partner is my husband. They always, what should I, before I enter into this new idea that I have with my insert whomever, what kind of recommendations, what should I be looking for, and what should I not be looking for? I feel like you've already kind of leaned in towards maybe a couple of bits of advice, but do you have something that you're like, make sure blank, blank, blank is in place, and that will help you guys through that transition?
Yeah, I think the two main things are separate roles and responsibilities, and knowing that, like knowing who owns different things. And then I think for us, the other most important thing is, because we both love what we're doing so much and it's our whole life, it's all we want to talk about, it's all we want to do. Like it gets like, it's all, our whole life is Sun and Swell. I mean, of course our daughter's in it now, but it's all like, it's all we talk about and stuff like that. And so it's like, for us, we kind of have to it's actually been, having a daughter has made it way easier to.
Really?
Because we're like, you know what? Like we're coming home in the evening and we're literally setting aside these 3 hours for just her. We're taking her on a walk. Fair. We're going to do dinner with her. It's bath time before we come home, work out, and then like get back on our computer, so it's like, we're kind of, now we have a reason that we feel responsible, that we like have to take time away from work. But and we have to be really conscious about like I always tell people, like if you're working with your significant other, like pick a day, or like don't work Saturdays or something like that, because it can all blend together. And that's like, even though you don't it's not like the typical kind of burnout where you're
Yep.
like, working 20 hours a day. You kind of are, because you're always thinking about it and talking about it. And so it's like,
Absolutely.
that's like I think after there was a period of time where we're like, wait, we feel like really exhausted. Like we just need to like start taking some days off on the weekends so we could like, you know, clear our minds.
Clear your minds. Yeah.
Yes.
I think scheduling, right? Scheduling the break. Like you have a wee one that is really dependent on you. We
Yeah.
have older kids that if I just checked out, I could work until 10 and they would run their own life. But I think literally having a reason to stop and kind of going, okay,
Yeah.
6 o'clock, I'm going to make a meal and I'm going to hang out and we're going
Mhm.
to do this thing. And then, dedicated time away from it, I think helps the brain too.
I do too. Yeah. And treating those like personal things as appointments, like, oh, 6 o'clock, it's dinner time,
Yes.
and not feeling bad about that. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
growing up in, or starting my career in professional services, not that any one particular person ever like told me I needed to feel this way, but
Yeah.
I always felt like it wasn't okay to like leave early for dinner. Like I was
Right.
always like, you have to keep working, you have to keep working. And so
Yes.
I like, it's been a really big mental exercise for me to
Hmm.
not feel guilty when
Yeah.
I'm not working. Like when I put
Yeah.
down the computer, I'm like, I feel like
Yeah.
I really had to work on that. And it's hard to give us permission sometimes.
Totally. Well, last thing before we get into the wrap up here,
Yeah.
I like to talk a little bit about mentoring. Now, you have people mentoring you and you are mentoring people. I see that you're a Tory Burch Fellow, which is super exciting. I spoke with somebody else from Tea Drops,
Oh, Sashi. Yeah.
Sashi,
Yeah. I
yes,
love
recently,
Sashi.
and
Yeah.
she is as well. Tell me, what are you getting out of that fellowship right now? How and do you look to others as well, or do you kind of keep your scope small when you're looking for advice or just kind of a sounding board?
Yeah. So what I love about so I feel like I have a lot of really good I don't know if it's called like peer to peer, but I feel like I
Yeah.
have there's a Tory Burch network and I have a couple other networks. I mean, that's really good,
Uh-huh.
like just like a founders
Yep.
that's like around a similar stage.
Yeah.
And what's awesome about like those networks, like just speaking to Tory Burch specifically, like
Yeah.
Sashi's business is a little bit ahead of ours. So like
Mm-hmm.
whenever like since I've started, I got connected
Mm-hmm.
with her early on, and she's been like an amazing resource of like helping me like if I have a question about something, like she's usually already been there.
Yep.
And then there's other people like in that fellowship program that maybe we're a little bit ahead of, not necessarily like on size, but in sustainable
Mm-hmm.
packaging or something like that. And it's like that. So for me, that's what I found super valuable is like this network of other founders that are similar stage. Maybe we're each a little bit smaller or bigger or whatever, but that
Yeah.
similar stage of our journey that we can like just have as a sounding board or to ask questions to. And it's just to me that's been really just a really valuable network to have.
Well, I love, and I just love your journey so far, and I'm a big fan of kind of like entrepreneurial businesses because you guys are, well, I don't know, I'm meeting so many amazing women at all stages and sizes of companies, so really excited to be able to talk to you. Been a big fan of compostable and recyclable and reusable for before it was a thing, before a lot of people who are in the industry are even around. Sometimes I feel like
Yeah.
I'm dating myself, um, but love the work that you guys are doing. And before our time is over, I'd like to kind of just switch it up and move off topic. Not tremendously with this first question, but I always have a few questions that I ask everybody, the same set of questions. And the first one, which you have already identified, but we can see if there's something else, is if there's some sort of interesting fact. I call it a happy hour fact, something that you like to share with people that they go, oh my gosh, no way, I've got to tell my friends about this. Do you have something about your industry?
Yeah, so I just learned this the other day that the very first, this is so random, but the very first plastic bag was brought to grocery stores in the U.S. in the 70s.
In the
In
70s.
the 70s, plastic grocery store bag. I want to say, I believe, I hope I'm not saying this right. I think it was from Exxon. It was from the oil industry that
I
someone
would not,
created the bag.
yeah, yep.
Customers like rejected it. They didn't want it. It was like
No.
a 10-year PR effort to like get these. Yeah, so it's this great. I was like, wow, the history of this. But like, and now of course, like we're trying to get rid of plastic bags in grocery stores. But I thought that was so interesting. I was like, oh, of course it came from like,
Of
an
course.
oil company was like the and it's still is, oil companies are still behind most of the plastic bags today. But
Yes.
anyways, that's my random fact.
Oh my gosh. I didn't yeah. I even think I remember when that switch started happening because I was a kid in the 70s and 80s,
Yeah,
and I distinctly remember when it switched from paper to plastic, and it
yeah,
felt odd for the longest time,
yeah,
and then of course it switched back.
yeah.
Tell me, are there any other women leaders or even rising stars out there that you've got your eye on that you'd like to elevate or simply admire publicly?
Yeah, so there's actually I feel like this is like my kindred spirit in the world of starting eco-friendly companies. There's somebody I met through the Tory Burch Fellowship. Her name's
Okay.
Stacy, and her company is Kent,
Okay.
Kent, and
Mm-hmm.
they make she makes sustainable underwear
Oh,
for women. And
okay.
but her like the way that it's so funny because we've just kind of stayed close throughout the past couple of years on
Yes.
and what we've realized is the things that we're trying to tackle and the way we're trying to tackle them with like the standards that we're trying
Yep.
to achieve are
Yep.
so similar, but like we're doing it in food and she's doing it in like undergarments, and it's
Yep.
like it's like she like I heard or she was explaining how um her underwear itself is compostable because it's organic cotton, but then also like the lengths that she's gone to get like compostable, biodegradable elastic, which like is like just
Oh,
a
that's a
little a detail that
thing.
like most people don't. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I love her company, and I love everything she's doing, and just like I said, same passion, but just totally different world.
Wow. What brands or trends do you have your eye on right now and why?
Yeah, I think the two that I've been following the most, we touched a little bit on this earlier, are regenerative organic farming and
Yeah.
also upcycling.
Mm-hmm.
I think, we work with a lot of organic farms, but I think that next step when it comes to sourcing ingredients, I'm just super interested in. It's like I'm hoping to we do have a couple of regenerative organic things that we sell right now, but I talked before why we're not spending all of our time on those areas, but definitely like that's what I'm following, and
Mm-hmm.
would love the more and more we can be playing in those worlds,
Mm.
the better.
Love it. How are you keeping yourself sane and centered these days with a new business and a new baby? Like, are you?
Actually, I feel like I feel like I'm more centered now than I was, like I was saying before baby, but it's because I have these forced breaks. So like
Yeah.
two things that like make my days good is if I can go on a long walk, and it's usually with a stroller. I
Okay.
like to listen to like an audiobook or
Uh-huh.
something to just like enjoy, like because I feel like I have to feel like I'm multitasking, so my audiobooks keep me busy during my walks. But that's always nice. And then also like exercise is like just so that I whether it's more it's whether it's my Peloton or I
Sure.
like to do bar classes. But
Uh-huh.
that if I that's like a make or break thing on my day. If I don't do
Love
it,
it.
I just don't feel as good. But
Understand.
yeah.
And then if people wanted to connect with you, what's your preferred method?
LinkedIn's perfect. Yeah,
Awesome.
that's usually the best place to connect.
Awesome. Okay. Well, hey, thank you, Miss Kate. Thank you so much for your time and your commitment to just the community in general. The work that you're doing, I think, is going to have just a far bigger foot. Well, you probably have an idea of how big of a footprint it might be, but I think changing the world is pretty awesome goal. So I thank you so much for your time and the work that you're
Yeah,
doing. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. And to everybody else,
thank
thanks for
you.
listening. And you can catch Miss Kate and her brand, excuse me, and her brand Sun and Swell Foods at, is it sunandswellfoods.com?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So check her and her business out, and we'll see you next time. This episode is sponsored by Retail Voodoo, a creative marketing firm specializing in growing, fixing, and reinventing brands in the food, beverage, wellness, and fitness industries. If your naturals brand is in need of positioning, package design, or marketing activation, we're here to help. You can find more information at retail-voodoo.com. And so there you go. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to this channel and share with your network. Until next time, be well and do gooder.